You are listening to When Life Gives You Lemons, the podcast that speaks to high-performing individuals who have been through adversity but come back stronger. I'm your host, Emma Levy, a physiotherapist who has helped elite athletes on their way to Olympic success. This podcast was born following my own trauma when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of just 36. Sat in the chemo chair, I set myself the goal of starting a podcast to explore resilience and the power of mindset. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to take a quick moment to thank you for listening. This is now season 7 of When Life Gives You Lemons, and I couldn't have kept it going without my listeners. If you enjoy listening, do please remember to press the follow button, which you can find on all major platforms. Also, a reminder that you're able to watch all of our episodes on YouTube, and you can subscribe there as well to make sure you don't miss any of our new content. You can also follow us on Instagram at Life Lemons Podcast. Now on with this week's show. Today, I'm welcoming Stephen McRae to the podcast. Stephen is the principal dancer with the Royal Ballet here in London. Although Stephen has achieved immense success throughout his dancing career, it has not come without its challenges and setbacks. And I'm looking forward to chatting with Stephen about how he was able to overcome these difficulties along the way in order to get to where he is today. Thank you, Stephen, for coming to East London today to chat with us.
Thank you for having me.
Your journey into dancing wasn't an obvious one. How does a kid from a motorsport family in Australia get to the Royal Ballet?
Yeah, I love sharing this part of the journey with people because, you know, many people say, oh, ballet dancer, they assume you grew up in a family who went to the theatre every week and you're surrounded by the arts. And that was not my upbringing. I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney. And at the time, I guess many people would say it was culturally starved. My parents made me believe I had absolutely everything, but we didn't go to the theatre. I didn't go to the museums or galleries or anything like that. But motorsport was absolutely the passion of the family. So I grew up at racetracks. My sister and I were always surrounded by my mum and dad with the race car, and it was very much a family thing. But my sister, who's a bit older than me, did gymnastics and a bit of dance. And age 7, I just said to my mum and dad, actually, I want to have a go. I want to have a go at a dance lesson. And that was it. They just said, okay, let's find you a local school. And I started. It was, you know, again, just looking back without being all stereotypical and cliche, but it would have been so easy for my parents just to brush that off and say, no, we don't do that. And they've never once done that. They said, okay, we know nothing about this, but we'll try find you something to support that.
And in your first dance class, were there other boys? Or do you remember being one of the only boys back then?
The first ever class I did, there was another boy in the class, but it was more the teacher that I can clearly remember. This teacher was life-changing, to be honest. I was a very shy boy. I would hide behind my mum's leg and didn't really communicate with people. And this lesson, I went in and I say to people now, it felt like I was a tiger unleashed because this teacher would just scream out like, jump as high as you can, spin as fast as you can, like fall over. It doesn't matter. You just get back up and just try, just feel what it feels like. And honestly, it just felt extraordinary to have this teacher say, go on, just do it, just fly. Doesn't matter what it looks like or nothing. There was no preconceived idea of what I was trying to achieve. I'd never seen dance before. I'd never seen a ballet before. So I didn't know what I was even trying to achieve. It was just purely a sensation and a feeling of freedom, which I know kids love running around and going crazy, but it's a very different kind of freedom that a young child in a good dance class, I say that in a good dance class, they are given that opportunity to explore this freedom that, to be honest, at that age, you're yet to feel.
Yeah, I think personally I find it very interesting because I have, like I said before, I have 3 sons and my eldest son is into drama. Great. And as a young kid, he enjoyed dancing.
Yeah.
But I think he struggled with the fact there was always girls.
Yeah.
You know, he'd go to these classes and he was often the only boy.
Yeah.
And sadly, that really did put him off it at a young age. Yeah. And, now he's probably got to the point where he's too old for it. And so what do you think? How do you think we could get more boys, more teenagers, male teenagers into dance?
Yeah, I think many many people obviously have this preconceived idea of what dance, and particularly ballet, what that is. But I have to say, I was 14 when I saw a video. It was a VHS that my dad had recorded on TV late at night, and it was a gala performance from the Royal Opera House in London. Now, obviously, I didn't know what that was. My dad absolutely didn't know what that was. But he recorded it because he saw that it was dance and thought, oh, maybe Stephen would like this. He might be interested in this. So I was, around 14 at the time. Now, obviously, at that point, I'd been doing so much dancing, but it was purely because I liked how it felt, and I would go to competitions and things like that. But this particular gala performance, it had a short snippet of a ballet called Manon. And the final scene of Manon, it's just a pas de deux, which is a dance for two, man and a woman. And the lead, Manon, she dies in his arms, basically. But it's such a physical expression. You know, they're in the swamps, so all the clothes are ripped, and you just see like the bare legs, and it's so powerfully athletic, but beautiful at the same time. And I think it hit me so hard that week I said to my ballet teachers, I have to do that. I don't know what it was. I didn't know the story or anything. I didn't know the context of anything. But I saw just this power of how the athletic side of sport and, you know, everything that represents combined with the artistic side and the beauty and the raw passion, how they collided. Yeah. And I just said, that's what I have to do. I have to do that. So that was really the beginning of the mission of, okay, mission Royal Ballet. I need to go to the Royal Ballet because that's the home of that particular ballet. And
wow, so you were 14, and at that point, did you know you were good, or at what point did you realise, you know what, I might be able to get there?
I think I've been blessed to have teachers from day one that were always so open to the idea that none of them have all the answers. So when they felt they had taken me as far as they could possibly take me, they very happily said, it's time, you need to go now, we need to hand you on to somebody else. And that kept happening. And I just think that's the most extraordinary thing anyone can do for a young person. And so my teacher that I ended up being sent to around this time when I saw this video and all of that, in Sydney, she was the one who said to my parents, you know, your son could go to the Royal Ballet. And we didn't know what that was. So I thought, is it in Melbourne, or, you know, why do I need to leave Sydney? When they said it's London, I was like, why on earth would I move to London? Like, Australia's the center of the world, you know? And then she really started to expose me to what that meant. So she showed me lots of videos of incredible artists in the past, and just talking more about what that might mean to pursue this passion as a profession. And obviously as a 14-year-old, you have no concept, because you have no concept of what it's like to be an adult. You don't know what to do that passion as an actual job. You don't know what that means. Live on the other side of the world from your family. You have no concept of what that's going to do. It just sounds exciting. So it was a huge whirlwind from sort of the age 14 to then suddenly turning up in London and trying to make it happen.
So how did you actually get there? Did you apply? How did you get into the Royal Ballet?
I mean, my parents gave me absolutely everything I could ever dream of, but financially there was no way they could make that happen. Obviously, the Royal Ballet School is the best ballet school in the world. That comes at a cost. So there are a number of different dance competitions around the world. So I was entered into a few in Australia, which helped with prize money from winning those competitions. That helped to buy flights. And there's a competition in Switzerland called the Prix de Lausanne, and it's held every year. And the prizes are scholarships to the best ballet schools, or it's also apprenticeships to companies around the world. So I went off there. I just turned 17, and I luckily won first prize, which means you get first choice of where you want to go.
Wow.
So the director of the Royal Ballet School at the time, she was head of the jury. So she said, tomorrow morning, just come straight to London don't waste money going back to Australia and waiting for the academic year to start. So I did. I won the competition on the Sunday, and the Monday morning flew to London, and I've never lived in Australia since.
No way.
Yeah.
So you literally didn't have any of your belongings really with you?
I had a couple of costumes. I had what I thought was winter clothing coming from Australia. It was a Quicksilver jumper and a pair of Converse shoes. And yeah, at the time, obviously, the world of safeguarding all that was nowhere like it is today. So I didn't have a guardian to go to on a Sunday and have a roast or anything. I lived in a hostel with strangers.
At the age of 17, it's young.
Yeah.
Wow. And then I imagine your parents, left straight away? Or?
Yeah, so my mum came with me to the Prix de Lausanne in Switzerland, but then obviously the plan was to go back to Australia. So, she couldn't afford to spend weeks in London. So I was dropped off in London and she continued.
And that was
it.
That
was it, yeah.
And how was that? How did you settle into London? Were you homesick?
I honestly hated it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a really odd period of time because obviously you have these goals. We all do it. You have these goals. I'd really love to achieve this. So I'm going to put that, and that in place to try and get closer to that. And then when you're getting close, you think, okay, now I'm going to put that in place and dun. So the goal up until that point was just, I need to get a scholarship at the Prix de Lausanne. I got the scholarship, got to the school that I wanted to get to, and then got to London and thought, I've not even thought of what's next. I hadn't even thought of, okay, what happens next? And then also the realization of, okay, this is nothing that I dreamt of. Because the homesickness, it was so crippling. I would break out into all these rashes because anxiety and things like this. And I genuinely was alone. I didn't have people around me to sort of prop me up, or there was never anyone to just say, like, oh, how are you doing? Like that it didn't happen.
None of the teachers took you under their wing?
No, I mean, everyone's so busy. And of course, there's this assumption that, oh, this kid's just won this competition, so, he's obviously going to be very cocky and arrogant and, he's on a mission, so he's fine. And that was not in any way. I was so swamped and overwhelmed by, a huge cultural shift. I was surrounded by students that had gone through the Royal Ballet School. Some of them had joined an associate program from the age of 8. So they were so, fully ingrained with the culture of an institute that had such a rich heritage. They were familiar with just even the building, like going across to the company and seeing the company members and things like that. They were so used to it. And I was just sat there every day thinking, what on earth is going on? I've never seen any of these productions before. I'd never seen a live ballet before.
You've never seen a live ballet?
No, the first one I saw, I was actually stood on the Opera House stage with the ballet company.
No way.
Yeah. So it was such a huge whirlwind, to be honest, that I think it shocks people because I just loved to dance. I loved what it gave me, how it made me feel. It was purely driven by that. It was not because I, wanted to replicate what somebody else had done, or I was influenced by the style of a particular dance or anything like that. There was none of that. It was just that one pas de deux I'd seen that made me think, I want to do this because I love what that particular piece represented. So it's a lot to suddenly arrive in a setting and your brain is starting to question, like, oh, none of this is anything that I imagined or had even thought of.
And there's only a few kids every year that get offered contracts at the Royal Ballet.
Yeah.
So is it quite competitive in that environment as well? Was it a bit cutthroat, which I can imagine would have just added to the loneliness that you felt?
I was very fortunate. The year group that I was put into was an incredibly friendly year group, and I made the most wonderful friends arriving in London and remain friends with them to this day. So that was amazing because they kind of took me under their wings, so to speak. But the reality is there are elements that it is a team sport, but at the end of the day, it's not a team sport because everyone's just constantly looking for a promotion or the next role they want to do or to be the dancer that the choreographer creates the new work on. You can't hide from that. I can't sit here and just say, no, it's such a friendly world. Yes, it's friendly. You make some of the closest friends you'll ever meet, but that's separate from the actual daily doings of the profession, you know, and when that curtain goes up, it's you that has to deliver. You know, it's like a tennis player. Yes, there's a whole team of people and they are a team, but when that player walks out on the court, the team can't do anything. Yeah. It's that player in the middle that's got to deliver. And it's exactly the same in our world.
Yeah. And then so age 17, 18, you did get offered a place at the Royal Ballet. And then am I right in saying you actually, you quite soon after, you became a soloist?
Yeah. So I was, you know, I've done a few different degrees throughout my performing career. And one of them, it was just a simple business degree in business management and leadership. And obviously, you read so many books and texts and all this sort of stuff. But this one tiny little concept has just always stuck in my head. And their idea that, well, the word success, but I don't agree with it being success, but let's say success is a three-legged stool. So you've got to have the hard work, the talent, but you've got to have the luck. And I really believe in that because when I joined the company, there was obviously an element of talent because you don't move to the other side of the world with people saying, here's a scholarship if you don't have something. Yeah. I was clearly willing to put in the work. You don't give up your family on the other side of the world for nothing. But I definitely had the element of luck. And that's in regards to when I joined the company, there were certain dancers that were maybe retiring or injuries happened, illness happened that in these environments, they always just turn and they look at you and say, do you know it? And I just always said, yes. You know, I never knew any of it because I'd never seen these ballets before, but I just always said, yes, I can do it. I can do it. So there was definitely an element of that. So within those early years in the company, I was promoted each year to a different rank.
Wow. And is that quite a rapid progression or is...
Yeah, I mean, it's very much dependent on the director and the company, the culture of those companies. So each company has different cultures and the way of doing things. My director at the time was one that didn't fast track, really. It was not a thing. So, of course, as a young dancer, I was still annoyed that she wasn't doing it quicker. She made me go through every rank to get to principal. But I'm actually really grateful now that she did do that because you learn so much by doing all those roles leading up to those top ranks.
But you were still made principal at only 23.
Yeah.
It still sounds quite young.
Yeah, very young. And when I think of, 5 years before that, I was only seeing my first ballet live. And then 5 years later, I'm a principal. That was,
Do you remember how it felt when you were told that you were going to be principal at the Royal Ballet?
I think, to be honest, I knew that when my director said, I'm going to make you a principal, I knew that that was when the real work was just starting.
Okay.
I think obviously wanted it, and that's the goal. You want to be principal. But before you become a principal, you've already had a taste of doing those principal roles.
Right.
You don't just get promoted and then suddenly have to do the work. You do some of that work before. And you realize very quickly, oh, okay, it takes a lot to do these roles, to be the one that's in the middle of the stage. So the realization of, oh, okay, I've got the rank, but with that comes enormous responsibility.
Okay. So it's not like yes, I've made it.
I don't think I've ever felt that.
Really? Well, that's interesting.
Does anyone ever feel like they've made it?
I think you're right, isn't it? As soon as you get here, you want to go to the next place.
And the idea of a goal is a beautiful thing because that helps you get up in the morning. But those goals keep moving, don't they? And when you know when you're getting close to one of those goals, your brain instantly starts to shift the goalpost and you're already on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I guess subconsciously when I wanted to be a principal and was getting close to it, my brain had already moved on to, okay, but the reality of being a principal is going to be a lot more work.
And I talk about the danger of goals. And because we're always looking beyond that thing, that we don't enjoy the present enough.
And I'm definitely guilty of that.
Really?
I've spent, I think, far too much of my career, which again, it's not just the world of dance. Everybody does it. Anyone who's highly driven or even just focused on tomorrow all the time. And I very much spent a lot of energy, I think, focusing on what's next, got to do more. And my wife's been very good at actually encouraging me to, it's not to stop and to say, you did it, like it's done. But occasionally just have a drink and cheers to that. Like you achieved that, you did it, or you made it through that, or
exactly.
You can still acknowledge elements of it. Nothing's ever perfect.
No.
I've never come off stage and gone, yeah, nailed that. Never. I've just never done it. But I do think you're able to come off stage and go, okay, yeah, there were elements of that were not good enough or need to be better. But that's why you go back to the studio or the gym the following days to work on those elements.
But you have to celebrate those wins.
Yeah, but there is always something that you can take away as a positive.
Yes.
And I've had to learn to do that.
Yes, because it's so important.
Yeah.
So, but that year before you were made principal, you had an Achilles injury and you were out for a whole year.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So I was very young. I joined the company and got to do some extraordinary roles. I got to perform the role of Romeo. I think it was after my second season in the company. And so I was very young and it was the dream to do that. But my body was not, I guess, prepared for the sudden ramp up of intensity. And so I had an Achilles issue, which at the time, we didn't really have a big medical team. It was just a physio, Pilates instructor, that was it. So I was advised to just stop. So I had almost a year off. At that time, climbing the ranks, competitive world, panic of, that's it. People are going to overtake me now. And I was so wrong. Like, there's a place for everybody. One of my colleagues, she's a wonderful ballerina in the company, she always laughs. She says, everyone can be their own Spice Girl. There are 5 different Spice Girls. Like, there's room for everybody. And it's so true. Like, we just get so caught up, don't we, on me,
Yeah.
and it's fine. There's room for all of us.
So you took a year out at that point.
So it was
to
almost a
rehab.
whole year, and then, I came back and did a few more principal roles and then was promoted. And I learned so much. I was very young. I was 22 at that time, 21, 22. And then went through over a decade without missing a single show, no major injuries. Of course, had niggles. Every athlete has aches and pains and was always on anti-inflammatories and all that sort of stuff. But never any surgeries, procedures, anything like that. And that went on for over a decade then, doing the most hardcore repertoire, flying all over the world, becoming a father. And then eventually the body started to catch up.
And what happened then?
So it was after my second child was born. I honestly started to notice that I would go back to the dressing room after performances, and some of our performances are relayed live to cinemas around the world. So you have huge audiences watching this, which obviously comes with pressure, but it's the most exciting and thrilling event to be part of. And I would go back to the dressing room after those performances and feel as if somebody had unplugged me. And the whole life of me was just... And I was emotionless. I wasn't high from a performance aspect. I wasn't angry that things didn't work. I wasn't anything. I just felt numb to the world, to be honest.
Like depleted.
Yeah. And this went on and on and on and on. And I started to honestly just think, oh, maybe this is the natural cycle. Maybe I don't love this anymore. And looking back now, I now know that I was in a severe state of burnout.
Right.
There was nothing wrong with my passion or love for it. I was so sucked into this treadmill of more. And I now know I was not fueling correctly. I was not looking after my body in any way, shape or form. Obviously, young parent, no sleep. So the body started to... Well, this is ironic, actually. At that time, with the concern of maybe I don't love this anymore, I actually started to write an email to have the discussion to request a year's leave of absence. Because I thought, I just need to step away. I want to be with my children. Let's just see what happens. And before I'd even had the chance to actually send that off, the next performance I did, I snapped my Achilles live on the Royal Opera House stage in front of 2,500 people. The body said, stop, enough.
Wow. So it's like your body made that decision for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't need the leave of absence because I had to then learn how to walk again. Yeah. So it was a very traumatic time, actually. My youngest child was only 5 weeks old when my Achilles snapped. So we had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 5-week-old, me with a snapped Achilles. My wife, who was a soloist with the Royal Ballet, had got back on stage after each child. So baby number 3 had arrived. So she was just about to start training again. And then the world went into lockdown, COVID. So there we are, locked in the house. My family's in Australia, so obviously there's no chance anyway of ever seeing them. My wife's family's up in Yorkshire, so there's no one around anyway. And my wife's essentially looking after 4 children because I'm literally can't walk. I'm in this boot, elevated, all day, every day.
On reflection, do you think that COVID actually came at a good time for you, though, professionally? Because it gave you that period to rehab where no one, like you said before, was doing your role.
Yeah.
And no one else was getting better.
It's a catch-22, actually, that whole situation, because it took 2 years from the night my Achilles snapped to stepping back out. The first show I did back was Romeo. It took 2 years.
Was that the show that you snapped it in?
No, ironically, I'd snapped it in the ballet Manon had inspired me when I was 14 years old. I know, ironic. But it took 2 years, almost to the day, to get back on stage. Essentially, because of COVID, I only missed 6 months.
Yeah.
Which, from a 2-year absence, that's a miracle.
That's quite a blessing,
really.
It is. You don't hear many positives about COVID.
No. But the issue was, though, that the treatment that I needed, the hands-on contact with my medical team, that was not possible in some of the crucial stages of the recovery. So once the football team started to get permission that they could have access to their training and all of that, those of us dancers who were on rehab paths were given the same exemptions as the footballers and elite athletes. So it was, I'd say, about 3 or 4 months into lockdown that I then suddenly had some hands-on manual treatment. But essentially it meant that we spent months undoing what was done during lockdown, to be honest. Yeah. So it had its pros and cons.
Of course. How hard was that rehab, both physically and emotionally? As a dancer, your body suddenly isn't doing what you need it to do.
Yeah, it's quite humiliating, to be honest, because you train from, I started dancing when I was 7 years old. And up until that point, really, you are always challenging the body, testing it, see, is it possible? Can I go a bit further? Can I, let's add an extra jump or jump even higher. And to then go through those kind of injuries where you have to start from the beginning all over again. I had to learn how to walk. It took a whole year just to be able to walk in what looked like a semi-normal gait. And then to then go into the ballet studio to then learn how to dance again with an Achilles ankle region that's still not responsive. And still to this day, there are fundamental movements that it can't do. And that is a hard thing to accept. But then also, isn't that also the beauty of the human body, though? We're not perfect. And it doesn't mean you should throw it all away just because something maybe isn't functioning the way you dreamt of it functioning. Or, I've had to find other areas that I can explore or find ways around those movements.
Be creative with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just given me much more appreciation for what so many people around the world live with daily, with whatever challenges they've got physically going on. And so I've just taken that on as like a challenge, really, and thought, so many people are dealing with so much. There has to be a way I can find a way through this. And I've been very lucky that my medical team at the Royal Ballet have been totally on board with that. When it snapped and the area that my Achilles snapped, it was very low down, right next to the heel bone. So it's the worst because there's nothing for it to attach to. It would have been very easy for all of them to just said, this is so difficult. And they never, ever said those words to me. So very
did you always believe you were going to come back, or did you have self-doubt?
I'm extremely stubborn. So I was going to absolutely try everything to make it possible. But there was a voice every single day saying, I don't think this is possible. I don't think it's possible. But my stubbornness, my heart every day was like, of course this is possible. And that's, I don't know, maybe psychologists listening to this will say, okay, he needs some special sessions going on there. But, I do work with psychologists. I have a wonderful psychologist at the Royal Ballet that I work with. And I think, honestly, the reality is that we all sacrifice so much in our lives, in whatever way that we all do it. And when you start to process some of those sacrifices, which when you're faced with an injury or your own challenges that you've been through, you do naturally start to look at some of those things and think, hang on, I've sacrificed this and this and this and this and this to get to this point. It then kind of makes you dig your heels in more and say, yeah, I've sacrificed all of that. I'm not going to just give up now and throw away all of that stuff. I moved away from my family on the other side of the world. I don't get to see them anywhere near as much as I would love to see them. I want my parents to be around my children as much as they can, but that's just not our world right now. And then to have these injuries come along where you feel that all of what you've been through is essentially on the line, and you just think, no. None of this is going to take away what I've been through. Like, no, it is not up to that injury to decide the fate of the next chapter.
Yeah. So you talk about sacrifices, but I think it's also resilience. We speak a lot about resilience on the podcast because I think the things that you go through in your journey probably make you more resilient. Every one of those sacrifices, like you put it, made you stronger. And so when you got to this big injury, you kind of were armed with this strength that you knew how to deal with it.
I think what's been interesting is that, so I got back on stage from the Achilles and did another 2 full years, 2 full seasons, dancing all the big repertoire and finally feeling, okay, yeah, I'm on stage. I was fully trusting the Achilles again and performing all over the world again. And then I went on stage to perform a very big ballet and felt great, was in the middle of Act 1. And as I landed from a big jump, I ended up all the way on the floor. Ooh. My right leg decided to just give way, but somehow I bounced back up. I grabbed the ballerina. We galloped around the stage. I threw her above my head. And then we started to do this quick little dance movement, and I couldn't feel my right side. And I thought, maybe I'm having a stroke or something. So I just stood still on stage while she danced around me. And then I grabbed her and hugged her and just said, we have to walk off stage now. So we did. We just walked off stage. It turns out I had snapped my ACL, my lateral ligament, my meniscus. I did all 3 in my right knee, which is the same side as the Achilles.
Wow.
And what's amazing is you talk about this build-up of resilience. When my Achilles snapped, the panic that overtook me, the anger, the frustration, like how could this happen to me? I was so angry. With the knee, because I'd been through that, my head just went straight away into, okay, great, they'll scan it first thing tomorrow morning. I'll see the surgeon Monday. I'll book the surgery in. I've done it before. I can do it again.
Yeah, like practical.
And that's it. It just went into...
practical mode.
It was very methodical.
But what's interesting about that as well to me is I was going to ask you about the original Achilles injury. If you felt it could have been prevented. You know, you said you were in this burnout.
Yeah.
And you were exhausted and you were dancing too much. You weren't eating the right things.
Yeah.
Whereas it sounds like the second time, and you've told me that you felt stronger coming back from the Achilles.
Yes.
You know, the sports science team were amazing and you did all the right things. So when you go to the knee injury now, that's occurred when you have done all the right things, maybe that's why there was less anger about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, with the Achilles, I was in such a dark place at that time. You know, I was so medicated. I was getting, you know, prescribed anti-inflammatories from the ballet company doctor and then hiding those and getting them from a GP and, you know, then anything you could buy over the counter. I was timing them in the most ridiculous format to just get through what I needed to get through. And, I think a lot of that anger and frustration was because of that. How had I allowed myself to get so deep and dark into this rabbit hole? And it wasn't even, you know, I was not angry with anybody else because I'm a grown adult. And at that point in my career and life, if somebody had said to me, you need to stop, I don't think I would have listened.
Yeah.
I said, what? What are you talking about? I'm fine. Now, I'm very grateful that our clinical lead, I had an issue with a calf after coming back from the Achilles. And it was the first time in my whole career that somebody has actually said to me, our advice is that you should skip these next shows. We don't think you should do these shows. You need to stop, get rid of this. You'll be back for the next production. It was the first time anyone had ever said, we're advising you to stop.
Wow.
And I did. I took it. And I am very hopeful that that will become more the norm. That, you know, in our profession, in the world of dance, particularly ballet companies like the Royal Ballet that are resident in a theatre, we perform all year. We don't have a rehearsal block and then a performance block. We're rehearsing and performing all the time throughout the season. It's not like elite sport where, okay, you know, gymnasts, for example, this is the the next event. So we're focused on, right, this is your 6-week build-up, or this is your 3-month build-up. And that's when you need to peak. And then we're going to come down, and then the next event, it's there. And we don't have that. So in those contexts, if somebody says, you need to stop, and the athlete says, but this is the one event I've been training for, I just need to be fine for that day, that's a different discussion. But in our profession, where you are at that level all year, people do need to say, you need to stop.
Yeah.
And I hope that that starts to happen more. Because essentially, you're investing in the longevity
of course,
of the body, of the art form. And if it means missing the odd performance here or there, but your actual career is extended 3, 4, 10 years, then I think that's the right choice.
Exactly. It's short-term loss for long-term gain, isn't it? And often I work with athletes who are told that they, need to take some time out. And I say to them when they're struggling, I say, you will come back stronger.
Yeah.
Because we're looking here at 4 years down the line. We're not about now. We're about looking 4 years. You will be a stronger, better athlete because of it. But I wanted to ask you as well, if we think about recovery in dancers, obviously there's a big aesthetic part of it and body image. Do you think there is a problem with like the aesthetics and that dancers should look a certain way and therefore they are not refueling as they should be? Or do you think things are getting better in that world?
I think unfortunately there's been this preconceived idea that, a ballet dancer, so you have to be extremely thin and obviously you just live off coffee and sweets. And we all know the reality is you ain't going to last very long if that's what you're living off. So, I say to young dancers all the time, you are a Ferrari. If you put rubbish fuel in a Ferrari, that vehicle is not going to function the way it's designed. Treat yourself like a Ferrari. Fuel yourself with the best fuel you can find. But because, unfortunately, our industry is, it's still filled with a lot of misconceptions, preconceived ideas, many people that perhaps didn't ever fulfill their own personal goals or expectations of what they wanted to achieve in the profession, grabbing on to these ideas of what a dancer should be, what they should look like. If you lined up all the principal dancers that's ever been in the Royal Ballet and look at the incredible pieces that were choreographed by choreographers, it's impossible to say that is the ideal body type, or that's a Royal Ballet dancer, or that's what a ballerina should look like. Because each choreographer found the unique artist that's going to help them create the ballet or the role that they have in their mind. So if that artist is far more athletic and powerful and whatever, because that is what's needed for that role, then that's what the choreographer went for. But if, I need, a teeny tiny little ballerina to do this particular pixie role or something, then that's what they were drawn to. It's not because that one was thin or that one wasn't. And I think that idea of using those preconceived ideas of, terms like thin or lean, that's the common one now that everyone seems to hide behind. I think that's just so dangerous. Yeah. Because it's an art form. We're artists who have to behave like athletes. And so an audience wants their heart ripped out. They want to leave the theatre being given the opportunity to laugh, to cry, to feel adrenaline, to feel sorrow, to feel all those things. You don't need a skeletal human on stage to do that. Yeah. You need a human.
Yeah, it's like role models for younger people as well, isn't it? And you have a documentary coming out soon, which is called Dancing Back to the Light.
Yes.
And it's going to be on the BBC.
That's right.
And in it, are you talking about these issues that we've talked about?
Yeah, so Dancing Back to the Light, which will be on the BBC in March, it's a documentary film, but it's not a typical documentary where you sit down to camera and talk and captions. It's a beautiful film made by Stéphane Carrel, and it captures my return to the stage after snapping my Achilles. And it then follows me for that entire first season back. It's one thing to get back on stage, but to then stay on stage is another conversation. So the film enables us to sort of jump around a bit. I unpick some of the time before the Achilles snapped. How did I end up in that phase? Why did the Achilles snap? Those sorts of questions. And it really opens up room for discussion about important themes. And it's not just in the world of dance. It's any environment that's high performance, any high achieving environment. We can all relate to these themes. That idea of burnout. I mean, I know it's a bit of a common term that seems to be thrown around at the moment, but I think more and more people are realizing that they've been living in a state of burnout at some point. And I think much of the world was in that state as COVID happened. And that realization when everything stopped, that's why many people said, what am I doing with my life? Like, why was I living in that state? And then it's been ironic, actually, that the world getting out of lockdown and opening up, everybody had these grand visions of healthier ways of life. But I think actually lockdown has just turbocharged people's, I got to do more, I got to push more, I got to work harder, I've got to make up for that time. So the documentary, around the world, it's called Resilient Man. And in the UK, it's called Dancing Back to the Light. So look out for it on the BBC. But it's full of themes that I hope will enable family, friends, whoever you sit and watch the documentary with, to just have open, frank conversations about what is the cost of driving for success. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be a cost, because that's life. We all sacrifice, we all give up things in order to achieve certain things. But there's a fine line. And it's that constant work-life balance and that juggling act that...
It's tricky.
Yeah.
I watched the trailer, and I must admit the trailer gave me goosebumps. So I am really looking forward to watching that. Stephen, the last question I like to ask all my guests, even though, by the way, there is so much more I would like to ask you, but we're running out of time.
We'll do round 2 another day.
Exactly. A final question I like to ask is, if you could go back in time to when things were at their toughest, what do you wish you could have told yourself that you know now?
Put it simply, I think maybe be a little kinder to yourself. I think when you maybe are wired a certain way that, you're willing to put the work in. I'm not afraid of hard work. I quite like it, to be honest. I like getting stuck into something and being fully engrossed by something. But I think when you're in those periods of extreme challenge and everything feels maybe threatened around you, you start to question yourself and start to doubt. Am I enough? Do I have enough in the tank to get through this? And I think being kinder to myself would have enabled me to be able to sit back a little bit and say, of course you're enough. Of course you've got what it takes to get through this. And I definitely didn't do enough of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for
My
talking
pleasure.
to us today. Your story really is inspiring from the very beginning. And I will be definitely booking tickets to see you dance. You're going to be dancing in Romeo.
Yes, Romeo and Juliet at the Royal Opera House. That's March through to May.
Brilliant.
And there's a couple of mixed programs as well, April and May as well. So come along and test out what you think ballet is. It might surprise you.
Exactly. Well, it definitely did. We didn't talk about that, but the first time I ever saw a ballet, I was wowed.
Yeah.
The physicality of it as a physiotherapist, I was just in awe. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see you dance. Thank you, Stephen.
Pleasure.